Hi, this is Jen Rubin, and this is Jen Rubin's Green Room. First of all, I want to reach out to my friends, family, loved ones in California and hope that they are making it through this awful, awful period of time. I know the physical, the mental loss has been tremendous. The financial loss is almost incalculable. But despite what you may hear from the news or you hear from politicians, the rest of the country is with you or pulling for you or watching. We're ready to help in many ways. And we know, and I know personally, because I spent decades in Los Angeles, that the people of LA are incredibly resilient. I know everyone calls you the beautiful people. Everyone thinks you're superficial. Everyone thinks you're just concerned about the next liposuction or the next manicure. Nonsense. You guys are some of the toughest people in the country. You have made it through earthquakes, floods, fires, any natural disaster, and you've made it through many a political disaster. So you will come through the other end, and the rest of the country will help you do that, no matter what the politicians say and do. So we have that disaster affecting the American people, and we have many other disasters. Let's count the disasters, shall we? Well, at least we got the release of the first volume of the Jack Smith Special Counsel report. That's the one having to do with January 6th. Now, the good news is at least Merrick Garland managed to get that out before he was forced to leave office. The bad news is this is a reminder of the sheer incompetence, the naivete, the stupidity that it took to allow Donald Trump to evade prosecution for 4 years and then be able to return to the White House. Because Merrick Garland spent over a year, as he said, investigating from the bottom up, starting with the people who were actually there on the mall and who went to the Capitol, it took him that long to begin to actually investigate Donald Trump. And when he finally began that, and he finally turned it over to Jack Smith, gosh, we were already up against the clock. And sure enough, Donald Trump, who has every lawyer at his disposal and who is a corrupt Supreme Court at his disposal, was able to run out the clock in bizarre rulings, in ridiculous delays, in every legal maneuver possible. We do not have a single law that applies to everyone in this country, I'm sad to report. We have one law for everyone else and another for a MAGA ex-Republican president-elect who has a Supreme Court in his pocket. And because of that, he will never be held accountable for the crimes of January 6th. Now, to make matters even worse, it may well be that we never see the second volume of that report, which has to do with the alleged crimes stemming from his retention of top secret documents, which he stored in his bathroom at Mar-a-Lago. Just saying that is just galling that someone will have gotten away with that and then be reelected to be president of the United States. It's absolutely galling. And why might we not even get that report? Because Merrick Garland says, well, we can't really release that report because 2 other co-defendants might be adversely affected. This is madness. Donald Trump is going to pardon those people the moment he gets into office. And even if he weren't, the need to prosecute 2 small players who participated in a scheme that involved not only Donald Trump, but perhaps many of the people he's nominating for high office, like Kash Patel, that is a lot more important than prosecuting these 2 poor people who Donald Trump enlisted in his scheme. Why doesn't he simply dismiss the case against those 2 people, get on with it, and let the people know the full story of the purloined documents? Your guess is as good as mine. I really don't understand the mentality that is playing with such a degree of obsession over detail and small little rules and procedures and entirely loses the point. The point is, What has happened to our democracy? What is the true story behind the person we've just reelected for the presidency? And what danger are we in from a national security standpoint by putting him and others back in office? That seems to have completely eluded Merrick Garland. But I will say this, no one has defended parts of the Biden administration and their achievements more strenuously than I. But this is not Merrick Garland's fault alone. Joe Biden appointed him and he kept him in office for 4 years. He could have replaced him after a year. He could have replaced him after the midterms, and he could have gotten someone in there who was dogged, pedal to the metal, going full force and blowing through all of these hoops that he set up for himself. He didn't do that because Joe Biden, I think, never really appreciated the moment that we're in, that he's up against someone who is completely ruthless, who is prepared to bend and break every norm, and who has working for him a thoroughly corrupt Supreme Court. So Joe Biden wanted to have someone who was above reproach. No one's above reproach when it's the MAGA crowd. Unless you're Justice Thomas, you're in their gun sights. So it doesn't matter whether he appointed the Pope, Mother Teresa, Merrick Garland, or somebody else. They were going to come under criticism. So he might as well have gotten someone who was a tough prosecutor, who knew what he was up against, who started with Trump and went after him with the full vigor that that investigation deserved. And instead, Donald Trump is, yes, he's a convicted felon, having received no sentence, no kind of probation, no penalty, no fine, no nothing. He walks free. Well, isn't that a pretty sight? No, it's not. And it is the great failure of this administration, not only because the rule of law has been damaged, but because all of that is allowing the return of Donald Trump. And that is the legacy that the Biden folks are going to have to wrestle with. They are going to have to hope with the rest of us that our democracy comes out the other end so that the damage wrought by a second Trump presidency does not destroy the country in its entirety. We're going to have some blows, and part of the responsibility goes to the Biden administration for having put Merrick Garland where he was, and part of the responsibility goes to the president for not having stepped aside years ago and made clear that there would be a different nominee in 2024. He did not give Kamala Harris the benefit of a full primary, the benefit of a full campaign. She did her level best. She was heroic, but ultimately unable to defend against Donald Trump. And so we're confronted with that reality. What else is in the news? Well, wouldn't you know, Pete Hegseth, Mr. Fox News, is having his confirmation as we record this on Tuesday. Needless to say, he is not doing well in the hearings. In particular, the women on that committee, the women senators, are running rings around him, asking him tough questions he is unable to answer about not only his scandals, allegations of sexual misconduct, allegations of financial impropriety, allegations of, frankly, underage sex, underage relations, frankly, an entire career that is besmirched by scandal ranging from adultery to other misconduct. Yes, they've gone after that. But what they've really did is pointed out he's a boob. He knows nothing. He is completely unqualified. He knows nothing about strategy. He has a dim understanding even of the most basic facts. He is misinformed and misinforms others about so-called lowering of standards for women in the military. Never happened, doesn't exist. But we are lowering our standards for him. You want DEI? This is the ultimate DEI. We are appointing a corrupt white male, an incompetent white male, to the most important, or one of the most important national security posts because he's a buddy of Donald Trump and Donald Trump can keep him under his thumb. Now, that's DEI if I've ever seen one. And you know who would make a very good Secretary of Defense? Tammy Duckworth. She's a senator on that panel. She's running circles around him. And she, of course, lost her limbs in defense of the country. She was in battle, something that Pete Hegseth doesn't think women should do. And she knows a thing or two about national security. Now, she would be a good person, but of course, she would never serve in a Trump administration. So we're going to have to see if these Republicans, who have been moaning for years that Democrats are weak on defense, that Democrats don't care about the country, America first, America first. Well, if you want America first, you don't put Pete Hegseth in the position of control at the Pentagon. You just don't. That's just asking for trouble. That's giving a toddler the keys to the Ferrari and expecting him to stay on the road. So, God willing, they will not confirm him. But if they do, it will be the Republicans who are responsible for any national security failure, any intelligence failure, any diplomatic failure. Having supported someone who is so abjectly unfit, they're responsible for the consequences. So they should think long and hard before they confirm this guy for such a critical position. So we have just days left in the Biden administration. We're going to see a whole parade of these nominees come forward. Many, if not most, are completely unqualified. The newspaper, which I left this week, has chosen to endorse, essentially, Pam Bondi, the election denier, the woman who has not said boo, and in fact has cheered along Trump in his vows of revenge. Pam Bondi? Really? That's what we're looking at? Has chosen to give a thumbs up to people like Linda McMahon. WWE wrestling executive is going to be our Secretary of Education? Oh my God. Well, yes, we are in for quite a time. And one of the reasons I left the Washington Post, the main reason I left the Washington Post, is this is time for choosing, as they say. This is a time for unqualified, unabashed, independent defense of democracy. The mainstream media has failed us. It is failing us. You do not equivocate. You do not dish up false equivalents, and you do not give $1 million to Donald Trump and call yourself a free press. So we all have our work cut out for us, and it's going to take all of us. We're not going to be able to rely on the politicians, on the mainstream media. It's all of us together who are going to have to get through the next 4 years. With HelloFresh, you get farm-fresh, pre-proportioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your door. There are no trips to the grocery store, no planning, no menus, no grocery lists, and no wasted ingredients. You can count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. HelloFresh makes it easy to find the time to eat well with 50 wholesome, hassle-free meals to choose from every week, all delivered right to your door. Plus, their lineup of prep and bake meals comes with minimal mess and takes only 5 minutes of prep. Don't wait. Start letting your oven do most of the work. You have better things to do. And with so many options, you'll always have incredible meals ready to go for any occasion. Recently, as you know, may have heard, I had a little accident. Couldn't cook, couldn't do much with my wrists, but I had HelloFresh. Those pre-prepared meals, it did come in handy. HelloFresh conveniently works with your schedule. Their plans are flexible, and you can change your meal preferences, update your delivery day, and change your address with just a few taps on the HelloFresh app. I'm so glad I started my subscription, and I know you will be too. Don't wait. Right now, they have a special deal just for you. Get up to 10 free meals and a free high-protein item for life at HelloFresh HelloFresh.com/greenroom10F. That's one item per box with an active subscription. Free meals are applied as a discount on the first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. That's up to 10 free HelloFresh meals. Just go to HelloFresh.com/greenroom10FM. Everyone can also look for the link to the HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit, in the show notes. We are less than a week from the inauguration. And if your anxiety level has gone through the roof, well, you're in good company. Mine has too. And I think during this period of time when we all think the inevitable is finally inevitable and it's coming down the pike, it's going to be a rough 4 years. I think the inclination is usually one of two things. One is to leave the country. I know a lot of people are going out of town for a while next week. The other is to kind of gird yourself, hide in social media, doom scroll, trade the most outrageous quotes you just heard from the latest lunatic who Trump has nominated. But there's actually another way to go about it, and that's to actually make this a positive, community building, fun moment. I know that sounds completely opposite to what you're feeling, and it sounds frivolous and it sounds self-indulgent, but it's really actually serious. Fun is serious business. And one of the things that authoritarian threats depend upon is that people feel depressed, anxious, alienated, suspicious of one another. If you ever look at those old photographs or see a film or read about the Cold War, in those Warsaw Pact countries like Poland, East Germany, everything was grim. Everything was dark. People didn't make eye contact. Everything was blurry and blah and black and white. And it all contrasted to the bright colors, the bright lights of the free world. And that's a perfect metaphor, I think, for our next guest. Katie Paris, in 2018, decided she was not going to be depressed. She was not going to be alienated by the election of Donald Trump. And she started an amazing organization called Red Wine and Blue. I think the name itself is just brilliant. And it captures, I think, a sense of fun and participation and almost glee. It is an organization now of several 100,000 women all over the country. And they act in solidarity. They work at the local level to address issues and concerns that they have. They build community through positive in-person and virtual events. And they do what women have always done. That is, they problem solve. And in order to problem solve, you got to network. And Katie is the queen of networking. She started this organization really on a lark as an inspiration, and it has grown to a national phenomenon. So I couldn't be more pleased to have her. Katie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jen. I am really pleased to be here.
Well, it's an exciting week for me. As you know, I've started a new venture at The Contrarian, and you who have gone through this startup phase know what it is like. So remind us what you started, when you started, and how you started.
Okay, I just need to say congratulations.
First
of all, I am so thrilled for you. You are on the tip of the spear, just a shining example in my mind for, I think, how women everywhere are contemplating, like, what do I do in this moment from where I sit, from where I stand? And you showed us. You showed us from where you stand. And, you've been at the Post a long time. We've all looked up to you. And, as you have spoken truth, and this was really, really speaking truth to power. And I think we all, in our small ways and our big ways, have to find that for ourselves right now. So anyway, thank you for being an example. I'm so excited.
That is more than kind. And coming from you, it's especially just gratifying to hear that. But tell me, remind our listeners and viewers about your story. How did you start?
So I started Red Wine and Blue, which has become this sisterhood, this community of we're over 650,000 women across the country now. And it started with, me about 5 years ago. And, I was having my own moment following the 2018 elections of saying, okay, Trump got elected in 2016. It feels like there's so much hope I'm seeing across the country. I mean, Jen, you wrote a book about it, women sort of leading the way in that lead up to 2018, in that lead up to 2020. And when I looked and I saw what women all across this country were doing in the lead up to the 2018 elections, I was so inspired, but I also felt nervous. Like, what if this goes away? We need these women who are self-organizing to keep showing up. And we know that what that requires is community and connection. That's what it always requires. And so while I was excited to see the self-organizing and very inspired by it, I didn't see infrastructure being built around it. That really was coming in sort of from the bottom up. There's a lot of national organizations sort of trying to tell people what to do, but I didn't see that sort of supportive year-round infrastructure that was going to connect these women, provide them with, training, with support, with community in ways that are really tangible and on the ground, and was going to listen to them. And so I got excited about the idea after meeting with a lot of these women and being inspired by not only their sort of get shit done attitude, but their enormous amount of creativity that I thought, all that is required here is really infrastructure, something sturdy upon which these women can stand and continue to be connected. So I started Red Wine and Blue in Ohio, which is where I live. And I had worked in DC for a number of years. I've now lived in Ohio for 12 years. I had just had my second child. So I was really having those mama bear feelings of what country am I raising my children in? What state and community am I raising my children in? And I saw other moms, having anxiety about that too. And so what I know is that my anxiety increases if I just sort of bury my head in the sand, or I say there's nothing I can do about this. But instead, if I wrap my hands around it, if I connect with other women and creatively find solutions together, that's always the way out for me. So things are different this time, I think, coming off of the 2024 election, but there are similarities in terms of what I see of people feeling that sense of powerlessness, but also just sense of determination and reaching out their hands and trying to find what's next and who next that they can do this with.
Okay. So who are the women of Red Wine and Blue? Where are they? What do they do? What kind of is there an average person who is in the Red Wine and Blue community? I suspect not, because they're people. Tell us about the kind of people who you have incorporated, and really what is this mass movement actually?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, Red Wine and Blue started out as, organizing suburban women, and that is our heart and soul for sure. But we push back very hard at the notion that there is, one single description or stereotype of who a suburban woman is. We like to say, look, we don't all have matching picket fences or matching minivans. We don't all look alike, think alike, talk the same. There is a lot that we share in common in terms of what we want for our kids and our communities. But suburban women are diverse, and we love that, and we embrace that, and we always work to represent that. And the thing is, too, is that as we have grown, there are a lot of women who wouldn't even identify as living in suburbs. They live in small towns. They live in small cities. And what we've really seen is a hunger in those places, actually sort of the non-metropolitan suburbs, folks who are not really maybe even within 10 or 15 minutes of a city, who are feeling the most alienated and alone, and so hungry for the kind of support that we offer. So I think that has a lot to do with why we grew by about 150,000 women just in 2024. Women created over 500 local affiliate groups that we really provide that support and connection, and we help them from everything from sort of training and thinking about what is this going to look like, what do you want, what do you need in your local community, to using our own database to help connect them to other members locally. And that's how we really feel like we're best in service of our community, is by creating those connections. So yeah, there's no one answer to that.
No, there isn't. And there's no one activity. You're not a campaign organization. You are a doer and a empowerment organization. So talk a little bit about the kinds of things you help women to do and women help each other to do.
Okay, so maybe if you look at the presidential election and you think, all right, I don't know, what was it, at least $1 billion on TV ads,
Right.
every single day, A-list celebrity endorsements, tens of thousands of sort of out of town volunteers bust in, to knock on doors. Very robust operation in all those ways. But if you look at it from all those aspects, I would basically say that red, white, and blue is basically the opposite.
Yes.
We are about being hyper local, women in relationship with one another in their own communities, and then also connected with women across the country who share their values. But that connection locally among women who have lived in the places where they live for a long time or welcoming new people to that community too is so, so important. What we find again and again is that it's not so much that people want to engage in politics because of celebrities and the glim and the, whatever, the shine or the dazzle, but it's because they want to be able to have some sense of agency in their lives and be able to understand what's going on around them, how it impacts them and their families and their communities personally. And so we are basically all about connecting women locally within their own communities and giving them those sort of, next right things that you can do and helping them understand even among themselves, what the next right thing is for them and supporting them in that. So it's very much not top down. However, what we do, we really lead by listening, and we absolutely hear from our community all the time, sort of issues of resonance and sort of those issues that kind of bubble up and we end up working on together. No question, it's been reproductive rights, especially since the overturn of Roe v. Wade. Public education has also been a massive focus for us in the last few years, given all of this total, right-wing campaign of distraction with the culture wars, when, moms across the country, grandmothers across the country are desperate for their kids to get a high quality education. In my state of Ohio, 80 out of the 88 counties only have public schools. Mm-hmm. And what we have, instead of focusing on how are we going to recover from learning loss still from COVID, how are we going to provide kids really like the mental health supports, social emotional learning supports that they need? None of this stuff should be controversial. Instead, we are distracting from these issues by politicizing public education. And there has been a huge pushback on that. And I think that, look, we know what's ahead. We know that we have this administration threatening to dismantle the Department of Education and how badly that can hurt families who have kids with disabilities, kids who need IEPs. That is a real everyday reality. And so that is what we recognize, though, is that instead of becoming overwhelmed, disempowered, knowing that shit show is coming, Jen, we have to move to a place of understanding how does this impact me and my community today, tomorrow, and the next day, and what can I do about it? And guess what? Here in Ohio, we have thousands of school board races this year. Same thing in Pennsylvania. In Virginia, they're going to be having their governor's race and the opportunity to elect their entire House of Delegates. Right. And so we can kind of drown in the overwhelm, or we can recognize what we can control and recognize how, look, the right has built power and invested in building power at the local level for a long time. And we have the opportunity to do that right now. And that is what's getting me through the day to day.
There's so many issues that we can envision coming down the pike. Let's just take vaccinations. Yeah. Moms are generally the ones who are in charge of healthcare for their families. And it is not only a concern for every parent and every child, but it's a particular concern for people who have immune deficiencies, people who have special needs kids, whole classes of people. This is absolutely vital and life-threatening kind of stuff. What is the energy around that issue, and what are some of the things women are looking to do in order to combat the potential that we may have an HHS secretary who doesn't believe in vaccination. I mean, this is insane. What's next? Leeches? Bleeding people? I mean, we have
I know.
20th century medicine, the best in the world, and we are intentionally going to put people in harm's way. So what are women saying about this, and what are they doing about it?
I think it's time to, and we're already seeing this, and is we have to embrace local control. Yes. When it comes to our local school districts, we have had to do this in the state of Ohio sometimes too, when our state legislature puts forth policies that we know are bad for really, all kids. And so we work at this district by district level of educating other parents within the school district, advocating to school board members, replacing school board members if they have come in there just to politicize rather than just improve the quality of education and to make sure there's a safe learning environment for everyone, just the basics. I think that there is such a smorgasbord of possibilities that, sure, we could deal the next 4 years pushing back against RFK's agenda alone, but then there's also every single other agency that we're going to have to worry about. And so the key within all of this is to not bury our heads in the sand, but also not become distracted. The whole point, better than anybody, the authoritarian playbook here is just to throw the kitchen sink at us, make us feel overwhelmed, throw up our hands, and just say it's not worth it. I'm opting out. And so we can't play that. We have to understand what's going on, understand how it impacts us in our day-to-day lives and where we live, and then look at what we can control and how we can impact that. And we have to be selective about what we choose, because we can't do it all. Together we can, but no single one of us, or just a couple of us can do it all.
We have situations, and we're going to have more of them over the next 4 years, where literally disaster strikes. I'm sure you have many, many members who are in the Los Angeles area right now, and they are suffering real life-threatening conditions, loss of homes, loss of possessions. And there is something to be said for building your own support network and being able to contact people and not rely on the government. Obviously, you need the fire department, you need the police department, you need politicians, you need all kinds of other things. Talk to me a little bit, because this is such an immediate concern in many of our minds. I've spent decades in California, have friends, family there. Tell me a little bit about what the recent fires have kind of done to the community there, and how women are working to help each other out just with basic needs, like every possession I just had just went up in flames, or I don't have any place to live, or my business burned down, or I don't know how to get in touch with my relatives. Talk a little bit about that kind of response to a natural disaster.
Well, this is personal for me. I have a sister who lives in LA. She is about 5 blocks from the evacuation warning zone at this point, and she's all packed and ready to go and has a safe place to go at any moment when she needs to, and all the alarms set on her phone. So, our whole family obviously has been watching this all very carefully, and she has been, well tied in with her entire network, and we've been trying to support her in that. Also, I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina. And I was actually there during the hurricane, helping my mom care for my stepfather who had a health emergency. So I take this stuff really personally, as do women. I'm actually wearing my Asheville Strong t-shirt today. Yes. But this is personal to me. It's personal for women throughout our community. And to me, you cannot separate sort of that supporting one another, that need for mutual aid, from the need for ongoing accountability and advocacy. I think that thinking of those things as separate, sort of, I don't know, it feels dehumanizing of the advocacy actually, and just the connection between all of it. And we need all of it to feel our humanness and to be connected as human beings. So we have to be able to do both things at once, essentially,
Right.
Holding leadership into account as well as taking care of immediate needs. Honestly, and we know we're going to be seeing this a lot more. I mean, in terms of attacks on the immigrant community, any community, right? And it hurts all of us, and we have to be there for each other. I mean, it reminds me too of when when the Dobbs decision came down, it's like, wait, what do I do? Do I support abortion funds? Because there's now all of a sudden women who are going to die if they don't have access to reproductive health care in their state. Or do I work on holding these politicians accountable who are passing abortion bans in our state legislatures? And the answer is both. And I know that can feel overwhelming at first, but what we actually found is that it felt empowering to tie them together. We created a whole program in 2022 following the overturn of Roe v. Wade where we incentivized women doing advocacy and get out the vote work by it helped earn dollars towards, supporting local abortion funds. And so, you know what I mean? I think that we can be creative. This is what women are good at, okay, what needs to happen now? What needs to happen in the future? How do we tie them all together? It's the same way we put one foot in front of the other and get through our day. So, look, these challenges are massive. Our country has been through huge challenges before. And I continue to be convinced that whether it's overcoming disinformation in this, horrible media environment that you are contributing to bravely, or natural disasters, or any of the forthcoming real destruction and havoc that this administration will cause in people's lives. It is, we can get through this. It's not going to be without harm. But we can mitigate that harm. We can protect democracy if we work together. Maybe it sounds trite, but I don't think it's naive. No, it's the only thing that ever has worked.
Having just begun on this grand adventure of mine, I will say that there is a hunger, you put it that way, there's a hunger for people to want to be part of something.
Yeah.
That they feel that they are alone. Part of this is intentional. Authoritarian governments are really good at making people suspicious or angry or divisive. And just the sense of community is a way of fighting back against this very malevolent force that we have. But I've also found, and this took me by surprise, people want joy. They want fun.
Yes.
They want to have simply social connection and to be able to laugh. We're going to do really serious stuff like, the Supreme Court. We're also going to do stuff about pets because people love pets. Because if you bring people together on some basis, it doesn't really matter what it is, then they can be there for people in all kinds of different ways. Talk to me a little bit about some of the fun you guys have, whether it's
I love this question. So community, no doubt, is the antidote to extremism, to authoritarianism. The entire point is to divide us, pit us against one another. And they do that when we feel isolated, alienated, alone. So how do we combat that? We do exactly the opposite. And then what you're getting at is that in the process of doing it, if we do it without joy, it will not work. People come together because in relationship, it can be that life source and joy is so essential to it. The other thing that I think sometimes people who, we're in this serious moment, it feels so hard and people think, oh no, I shouldn't have laughed and had a good time. This is all too serious. And it's like, actually, if without joy, what are we even fighting for? What is the point of our freedom, of our existence, without joy? And so I actually think it's like completely integral to the hard work and the fight. And if we lose that, like we're ceding ourselves, like something core to who we are. And so I don't see it as a sideshow. I see it as integral to everything we do. So that is why at Red Wine and Blue, look, we like to bring the party. Okay. So whether we're meeting virtually, it always starts with like upbeat music, people getting together. We are super social, we held almost 1,700 events last year, virtually and in person. We like to get together. And when we have Zoom calls, usually there's somewhere between a few hundred and we've had up to 40,000. So it's a party and we have a good time. And guess what? When you bring that joy, when you bring that energy, what do you think happens to our engagement metrics? Anything, any way you're going to measure it, of like getting people to join something, do something, participate in something, it goes up. These things are just totally, they correlate, they're related, they're inextricably linked. So the more that we can remind people of that possibility for joy, like the more kind of gumption and grit people bring to working really hard for it. So that also, like at our in-person events, it's even better. Like I had never heard this term, but my team loves to do craftivism. Okay. Like, and that can be whether you are like making your bracelets or your vision boards or like whatever. It's like that puts people in this creative space that then leads to, like creative solutions, hard work. I'm also really obsessed with this idea right now that I heard from, I don't know if you read Martha Beck at all. She just wrote this book, Beyond Anxiety. And her whole thesis is basically that like the way that we can cut off anxiety is through creativity. We know when we're anxious, like we don't feel creative at all, but it turns out the opposite. Studies show that the opposite is actually true. Right. And so I'm always saying to folks, like, I get it. We're feeling anxious, all these things, but guess what? Like if we can come together and just connect, find that joy, work together to find solutions, check in with yourself. Do you feel anxious anymore?
Yeah.
Like, no. Actually, and so this is kind of like the bigger project at Red, White, and Blue. People think about engaging in politics and, whatever that might mean. And what comes to mind at first, like pundits yelling on cable TV. That ain't it. That is not what we're talking about. Right. That's like infotainment or something, or I don't even know. That is not what I mean when I talk about like political and community engagement. And so what we want is to sort of replace that whole notion with something completely different that actually feels like sort of a whole new way of thinking, even about self-care. Like getting together with a group of women and getting shit done and like bringing some joy to that is like way better for my anxiety levels than getting a manicure, Jen. Absolutely. And listen, I am here for a manicure. Absolutely. Right. But in terms of what's going to like actually bring down my blood pressure, make me feel a little bit more centered and sturdy in my life, it's definitely like the creativity and getting together with people. So we have like, we were just talking about some of the ideas people have planned just in the months ahead. We've got, I think last night we had Project 2025 bingo. We have trivia nights. We have a band book club. We do this trend where people bring like cakes to the park. Like we're here for all of it. And there's a new idea every week. And that's kind of my favorite part.
That is so great. And, I think people think to be engaged means you have to be on X or on social media and be doom scrolling all day long. And I really think what I love about you guys is you get people out of the doom scrolling, sitting by yourself, anxiety provoking, and the sense that in order to be responsible, you have to subject yourself to this all day long. It's really masochism. It's not helpful to be a masochist to sit there and be depressed by watching cable news all day long. That's really bad actually for you. So I love that you get people out of that space and that they interact with real human beings. So what do you do if you're listening to this for the first time and you're one of those people, you must be living under a rock if you've never heard of Red, White, and Blue. But if you haven't, and you say, gosh, what do I do? How do I figure this out? What do I do? And what can I do? And where do I go? All that kind of stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I do have invitation. So we just announced today, which is, we're recording this on today's Tuesday, right? What is time, Jen? Help me out, right? Okay. So I think the 14th, is that right?
It's a blur.
Okay. But anyway, so on Inauguration Eve, so we're talking January 19th. Yep. I know that this is a time a lot of people are feeling anxious about, with that forthcoming. And so on Inauguration Eve, that evening, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, we just announced that we are going to be holding an event with Heather Cox Richardson. We're calling Keep Calm and Listen to Heather Cox Richardson on Inauguration Eve. And basically, we're going to be, it's exact, look, if this conversation has resonated with your listeners, like that one will too. And we'll be doing it on Zoom. There'll probably be thousands of people there. It's an opportunity to feel that sense of community and connection in a virtual space. But see, the thing is about these Zoom calls we do is that we do breakout rooms where we break people down by state so they can connect at a more local level. They can find their local group. If there isn't one near where they live, we will help them start one and connect them to others of our members within 10 miles of them. So it's all about like, okay, in this time of overwhelm and anxiety, let's calm it down. That doesn't mean don't be angry. That doesn't mean don't feel passionate, but it means like, how can we get to a place where we can respond rather than react? Right. How can we get to a place where we can be impactful and focused rather than like lighting our hair on fire? Cause like that doesn't do any good. Right. And then we always see the next step to that is like, okay, let's connect. Let's understand what can we control? What is in that realm of influence? And let's take these next steps together. And that's like a way to give a big FU to this incoming administration. Just be in community together, be joyful together, and get shit done.
Absolutely. So give them the website or the place or the...
Yeah, where do totally. They go? Go to redwine.blue. There's no .com or org in there. Redwine.blue. And go to our events page if you want to sign up for that event. Or, I mean, like between now and then, we probably have another half dozen events that you could check out as well. We have troublemaker training every week.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, that sounds like a good time, right? Yeah. So there's lots of opportunities to engage. We have band book club this week. Yeah. So just come and be a part of our community. You can start with online. You can start with in person if you prefer. And, let us help you find your people.
Well, we had tried to do this for many weeks, but your schedule and my schedule are tough. I am so glad on the timing that worked out because This is when people need to hear it. And this is the antidote to the anxiety they are feeling in advance of next week. So I am so thrilled we finally got together, and I think I'm going to have to join you and Heather Cox Richardson because she is my favorite historian. Yes. And she is fabulous. And I would encourage everyone to find some way of connecting because that's how we're going to get through this. And women have always known that. Women have always done it. And I think together we're gonna make it. So thank you so much, Katie, for coming on. Keep up what you're doing, and we look forward to seeing what's next. And that was Katie Paris. Wow. Just listening to her, you get a sense of positive energy and a reminder that you cannot go into a funk. I know it is absolutely horrifying. It's horrifying to me. I have lived this existence of Trump dread and authoritarian fear for 9 years now. But the way they win is if we become depressed and isolated. The way we win is by joining together, by maintaining our social, artistic, creative connections and activities, by refusing to be crushed under the heavy hand of their propaganda and their negativity, and by maintaining the human connection that makes democracy possible. Democracy is we the people. It's not I the person, it's we the people. It means that as a community, as a country, we have to work together. We have to solve problems. We have to hold people in government responsible. We have to ourselves be active citizens. And when disaster strikes, as Katie was saying, whether it's a fire, whether it's a flood, whether it's the overturning of Roe v. Wade, we have to work together to work the problem. And I think women have always done that. So gird yourself, yes. Prepare yourself, yes. Grit your teeth, but also reach out and do something for yourself and for your community. Join Red, Wine, and Blue and other organizations and make sure you have help during the following years. We're going to all need it. We're all going to need to stick together. So remember, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. And if you like this program, you like our other programs, tell your friends. They can find us wherever podcasts are available. Bye-bye.